Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for jumping on. My name is Jamie Weatherby. I am part of the UNH Alumni Relations crew. If you've joined our webinars in the past, you've seen me many times. Today, we are here talking about coding and career opportunities that come with that skill set. We did just start live, so I might give it a few minutes to see how people are joining. We have about 8 people. I think you guys can see that week here on the other side of the camera. Just for a little context, I have a few partners and team members behind the scenes. We have Phoebe Moore and JC Dara, who are also on our alumni relations team. So they're helping me on the computer side of things to make this webinar happen. So I think we have a few people on, right? We're doing pretty. All right. We're at 12 people, so we're gonna get started. Again, thank you so much for joining. I have some fantastic UNH alums here to talk to you about coding. So to my right is Katie DeAngelis. She is a 2011 grad. So we're thrilled to have her here today. She is here talking about her perspective as an alumni from our professional development and training bootcamp. After that training, she is currently working as a junior web developer for GYK Antler. And then I also have Blake Janelle, who is a 2012 grad. He's an instructor for our Coding Boot Camp. So thrilled to have his perspective here today. He's currently a technologist and former principal software developer for Liberty Mutual. So just for a little context of our partnership, and then I will jump right into you guys. We work really closely. So professional development and training is a subset of UNH that offers continuing education to the community, and we really love to see our alumni take advantage of that partnership. So they offer a ton of training. We'll send you the link so that you're able to check out all the opportunities. But one of the best programs that we have, in our opinion, is the Coding Boot Camp. It just leads to much stronger career outcomes. It's a very robust program. It's lengthier, but it gives you a lot of career opportunities and a huge jump in that direction. So I'd love to hear more about each of you and how you came to be interested in coding.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yes, okay. Please, to my
right. So again, my name is Katie, and I got interested in coding when I was working as an information systems analyst at a small community hospital. The system that we were using where I worked was great, but there were definitely areas where we needed functionality that didn't currently exist. And so I talked a lot with the people that I worked with about why that was and kind of how we could optimize what we had. But it wasn't long before I realized that there needed to be like a little something more, and that the only way that I could really get involved and get these changes made was if I actually knew how to code. So that kind of started my journey of getting interested in learning how to do that. And I realized in the healthcare industry, we were kind of starting to make the pivot to web-based applications, which is when I found out about the full stack development bootcamp through UNH, which really focused on, web development. And so I contacted them for more information, and that's when I decided to make the jump. And so I went through the program, had a really great time, learned a lot, and leveraged what I had learned there to make the jump into a junior web developer role at GYK Antler, which is where I am now. And I just absolutely love what I'm doing. I love the company. I love the work that we do. And I love the team that I develop with. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So for me, I'm Blake Janelle. As Jamie mentioned, I originally got into coding as a high school student. So I instruct the boot camp today, but back then I was interested in getting involved in coding because I wanted to avoid a dead-end summer job. I worked at a hardware store, and I was like, isn't there something else I could do this summer that would help me longer term? And so I kind of just stumbled upon web development and building just very basic rudimentary websites. went out on Craigslist. Some people took a chance on me to build some really basic websites that I did not have the skills for at the time. And it sort of just took off from there. I ended up majoring at UNH in undergrad in computer science. And then after, a while being in the industry, decided that I wanted to share those skills as a bootcamp instructor. So now I'm helping train the next wave of developers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention at the beginning too, I would love if anyone in the audience has questions for us as we go, instead of just hanging tight until the end. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A feature. And I mentioned earlier, JC and Phoebe behind the scenes will be able to see those questions and flag them to us. So if you have questions as we go, or want anyone to elaborate a little further on anything that they've said, definitely pop that into the Q&A and we'll be able to add that into our conversation. So great. So it sounds, Katie, it sounds a lot like that was a shift for you, whereas like you were doing, that's what you had in mind and kind of where you started.
Yeah.
So how do you feel from those two different trajectories, that elevating your coding skills, whether it be from a different field or in your experience, to go from, DIY, trying to kind of figure it out, to getting more substantial training? How do you feel like that training has elevated your career or your opportunities?
I'll start this one.
Sure.
All right. Yeah. So, for me, coding is everything, right? So I code all day pretty much as a software engineer. And then I talk about code on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday as part of the boot camp. And I guess I can say, like you said, I intended to be a developer even, through college. And so that kind of went more or less according to plan. But what I didn't expect is to actually jump in and be an instructor and teach other people how to do it. And I think the reason that happened for me was that I realized how much I loved it. And while, yes, working with code may not sound like the most interesting thing in the world, but it's an opportunity to be creative and to it doesn't feel like work when I'm doing it. So when you get that match, I realized that it was a passion for me, and I wanted to try and share that out with other people. And it's been a really, really rewarding experience doing that so far as part of the boot camp.
Yeah, and I'm the exact opposite. I don't think ever in my wildest dreams, either probably in high school or college, would have ever thought that I would be here today, or a developer for a company. Kind of when I was going through school, I guess I always thought and saw a lot of the people that do become developers or engineers. I think of like Mark Zuckerberg, I think of Bill Gates, like Steve Jobs, people like that. So I never really saw myself doing it. And then kind of through the practical experience, through my career journey, realized that my experiences and my knowledge could help in this particular area, and that it's important to have developers and coders that have different backgrounds, kind of different career trajectories, and that, I felt that I would be good at it. I was kind of a curious person. And then when I started doing it, kind of like Blake, like I realized this is something that I really enjoy doing. Like I'm a curious person. I like troubleshooting things that aren't working. And there's no feeling like actually creating something from the ground up, just using your skills and your imagination. So that part has really been amazing.
I love a couple of the things that you guys said. So you mentioned, and I don't know if I ever thought about it that way, that there's a lot of, it's very analytical, it's very data driven. You really have to be so precise and spot on, which I feel like is usually one type of personality, but it's also, where we have the other side, which is the creative piece, and the part where we, you get to build something from the ground up, you get to look the way you want it to look. So I think that is really interesting and different about that field. And then also we talk a lot about, so part of my role is I do a lot of professional development, career work with our career team a lot. And we talk about when you're trying to build a career path, the challenge of that is, especially if you're new in your career, like how do you build yourself in the right direction? And I love, Katie, you pointed out that sometimes it helps if you come from a different perspective or a different background, where that way you can add more value, add a different perspective. And it's hard if everyone came from the exact same step-by-step process.
Yeah, 100%. It was funny because I was actually just volunteering for the Tech Women and Tech Girls week. And kind of one of the things that we talked about with the girls in trying to get them kind of interested in like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics roles or fields is that kind of without teams that are well-rounded, that have different backgrounds and experience, a lot of the things that are being created today might not represent them. Like we talked a lot about like speech recognition software, like on your phone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you ever have used Siri, or it's used a lot in hospitals, like Dragon speech recognition, about how in those early days when it was created, the teams were primarily male, and so they didn't really think about women's voices using these types of technology, and as a result, they ended up not recognizing women's voices. So, you know, if there had been women on those teams, you know, maybe they would have been like, oh, we should probably also demo it ourselves, like make sure it's picking up our voices as well as our, you know, fellow development team voices.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that the diverse backgrounds that are starting to emerge is so important. From my view on it, I came in knowing code. I really know how to code. I can do that really well. So whenever I go to tackle a problem, the problem I'm solving isn't code, right? There's an area, there's a domain expertise that I need to understand in order to actually build software. So looking at it from the other way, if I'm an expert in a given field, and I learn to code, I can immediately apply that. There's no additional learning required. So both from the standpoint of your background and what you already know, and the different types of people that we need to look to expand this career path to, I think the bootcamp is the best way to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because, we actually have a question from the audience, so let's jump into that.
An anonymous attendee asked, are you finding more women are attending these boot camps? As an instructor, if there have been, do you find they bring a different perspective?
Yes and yes, absolutely. I think, you know, in the tech industry, it is entirely too male dominated. And there's also a number of reasons too in the general industry. It's employers in the past have put a stamp on, you must have 4-year computer science degree or equivalent. So if you didn't have that background, you couldn't get into it. But now large technology companies are starting to accept bootcamp students, which has attracted a much more diverse set of individuals. So yes, it's not quite where we still want it to be. It's not 50-50 yet in the bootcamps that I've seen, but it's better than it is in the industry at this point, and it's definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I was actually really fortunate because in the bootcamp cohort that I was in, we were actually 50-50.
Nice.
So
That's amazing.
it was amazing. Actually, a couple of the teams that I worked on for projects that we created were completely female, which was really neat to kind of get their perspectives, their different backgrounds. We had women that, you know, had worked as engineers previously, but had kind of older programming languages that they had worked with and were now coming back for kind of a more web-based focus. I mean, there were people like me who had no previous coding experience at all. So it was really great to be able to kind of see those women pursuing things like careers like this, even though we don't really see like too many female engineers out there or developers out there. So it's nice to have that visibility and that representation.
Yeah. Well, I also imagine programs like the Coding Boot Camp allow you to change your mind or get exposure and then jump into that career. Whereas before, like you mentioned, it was you had to have that 4-year degree. You had to have built that track from the beginning. So if you were somebody who, I want to say based on society or based on, you know, the typical person who seeks out that career path, you maybe thought of that as an option early on. But if you didn't, this gives you an opportunity to say, wow, actually, that would be really interesting. I think I'd love that. But I missed my window, but now you didn't based on programs like this.
Yeah, and I actually did kind of feel like that. I was worried because I was like, ooh, you know, did I miss that chance to go and do like a 4-year computer science degree or information technology degree of some sort? And so the boot camp was really kind of a good way to experience this and to learn from my instructors and from the other members of the camp in that way, as opposed to having started from the very beginning on that track.
I feel like you've touched on this a little bit, but I also think one of the changing components to the coding field or the computer programming field is that in the past, it felt very narrow. And I've heard people say, yeah, but it feels narrow. But really with the way technology is spreading, I would imagine every industry and every field at every level needs some sort of support there. So do you feel like you're, I want to say, pigeonholed based on that skill set, or do you feel like there's a ton of opportunities in wherever you want to go with it?
I feel like there are so many opportunities. I mean, we kind of live in an age where kind of these digital aspects affect pieces of our everyday lives. And it's funny because there are a lot of things that you may not necessarily think about when you think of programming or engineering. Like I actually just met a woman who actually programs like the LCD screens for like smart fridges and things like that. And I was like,
interesting.
That's so funny. Like my fridge has one, but I never thought that there are people out there that actually program that. So yeah, it's everywhere. And I feel like once you kind of open the door and get a foot in there and start to learn, it's very easy to take that knowledge and kind of pivot to other areas and other languages.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's become extremely broad. Every industry, whether you're a small business or a huge tech company, you're going to have software. And not only software, but as Katie mentioned, everything's programmable now. It's the Internet of Things. So whether it's your phone or a traditional desktop or your refrigerator, there's software components to everything. So I feel like I know that the skill set that you develop as part of the boot camp and just software in general, it's extremely portable in terms of where you want to apply that in terms of industry.
Great. So what do you think, it sounds like, there's one missing scenario to you guys, which would be if you're looking to build your career in a direction, but not necessarily become a full-on, I'm trying to change to a program developer. Are there components of either the Coding Boot Camp or that skill set that you feel could elevate someone's career that they're already in?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier, one of the most powerful things about learning how to code is that you can take that skill to something you're already really knowledgeable about. And all of a sudden you can do things now that you couldn't do before. I think one of the most common ways that people get into programming without really realizing it is working with Excel spreadsheets.
Totally.
So people approach it through an Excel spreadsheet and they say, okay, well, I know that I can use these formulas now, and that automated something that was previously manual. And then I realized, that I can start to build these things called macros. And what you're doing there is you're actually writing code within Excel. Cool. And then you start to slowly realize that, okay, wait a minute, this is maybe the lowest level or most rudimentary way to code. And we actually have a number of students in my bootcamp cohort that started that way and then realized that their job, that became part of their job, is to automate processes within something that they're doing. And then they said, all right, this makes sense. Now I want to take this to the next level and learn web development itself.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great about the Excel spreadsheet, because I know a lot of people who are like Excel wizards. And I mean, it's funny because they really don't realize that, what they're doing is programming, basically. I mean, sure, we might use like fancy text editors or IDEs, but I mean, you could go into any type of text editor like Notepad, and program. So it is funny how there are kind of those smaller things that you're already doing, which, you might be able to build upon. And then a lot of people that were in my cohort didn't have any prior programming experience, or didn't really necessarily maybe want to become developers, but currently they were project managers or they were business analysts, and they just wanted kind of that foundational knowledge because they work with developers or they work with engineers. And it kind of helps to be able to bridge that gap, learn that tech speak and
speak the same language.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times there kind of is a disconnect between, project managers or producers and the development teams that they work with. So this definitely helped.
Awesome. Very cool. I think we have another question from the audience.
Thomas Graham is asking if he's a lawyer by training, can he learn code?
Yes.
100%. Yes.
Can we ask him a follow-up question? Is he thinking for a career change, or is he thinking to piggyback on his experience as a lawyer in that field? I mean, he should be able to hear me, I think, outside. Okay, you both are looking like, how do I respond? But if he does, we can jump into that, because I would just be curious.
Also, I don't know if this was mentioned, but when I went to UNH, my major was anthropology and justice studies. So it was nothing technical at all. It wasn't any type of STEM or.
Thomas said he's looking for a career change.
Yeah, and I guess I can provide some anecdotal evidence there too. I mean, we at Liberty Mutual, we work with our legal department all the time when it comes to actual technology implementations, and we absolutely need to be able to talk the same language. And there's been some cross training that happens as part of that. So I can tell you, basically, working with folks in legal, they absolutely can, from any background. Anyone from any background can learn how to code.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm anecdotal evidence too. I mean, I completely pivoted. What I'm doing now is nothing at all what I was doing previously. I was a clinical analyst that was supporting an information system, and it sounds really technical, but really I was just helping users use the system. So there was really no coding or programming or technical background. I kind of came into this literally not knowing anything. Like, I used to call JavaScript Java, and my teacher, I'm pretty sure I drove him crazy. I didn't know what HTML was, what CSS stood for. I mean, I didn't know any of that. So, I mean, having gone through this program, it was a total and complete career pivot. And one of the things actually and we were talking about this earlier, I wish that I could have made the change earlier. I wish that I had made the decision to make the change earlier than I did. I actually started the program 2.5 months after my daughter was born. So it was
a whirlwind.
I know, it was an incredibly, it was so much. It was having just had a daughter, going back to work, and then starting this. If I can do it, I am absolutely 100% confident that anybody watching, either now or later, can definitely do it, 100%.
That's awesome. So actually, that's a great segue just to say, so when you took the boot camp, did you feel like the boot camp itself was enough training to be able to make that jump and to get hired in a new field? Or were there other things that you needed to seek out to feel confident in or get hired in a different space?
I would say I feel like you never feel confident ever. Like, programming and development is such a huge field that you never really feel like a subject expert in any one thing. It's gotta always
be changing too, right?
You're always changing. Like, especially if you are a web developer and you're using JavaScript. I mean, there are always like new The joke is, like, you never use the same JavaScript framework twice. It's like, it's always changing, always evolving. But what this bootcamp does is it sets you up to learn how to learn about this stuff. You kind of learn the groundwork, and then it sets you off in a direction, and you can take that anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I'll answer that in 2 ways, I guess. The first way is we already have, so the cohort that I'm in ends in mid-March, and we've already had students in the class that already have landed full-time jobs coding.
Wow.
Without even finishing the program yet. So yes, it absolutely provides you what you need.
There must be a huge need then too.
Oh, there's
right?
a huge
Massive.
demand. And I would totally second, Katie's point that the program's teaching you how to learn, and teaching you fundamentals of software development that, like I said, are very portable. But if you're going down in this career path, make no mistake, you will never stop learning. It's constantly changing. And that's what I think is so exciting about it. You never know everything.
No.
So just I think we do have a question from the audience, but to piggyback on that real quick, do you find that, so if the Coding Boot Camp serves as a strong foundation, do you find that there's a lot of on-the-job training? So if you got a job right out of the boot camp, you can feel confident that they're expecting teach you the nuances, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, as a junior web developer, I work in a fantastic team, and we do a ton of what's called peer programming. So we will sit together, usually in like pairs of two, and somebody will be driving, somebody will actually be coding, and there will be kind of another person, you know, over their shoulder talking about, you know, well, logically, how are we going to tackle this program? Let's try this. So there is so much on the job training. I mean, we learn a particular stack through the boot camp, but I have learned C#, I've learned Python since I've been at this job. I mean, you learn a lot. So
Right. Yeah. I think that's an expectation for all employers out there to, and this is true, and I can speak from, you know, behalf of Liberty Mutual, that we do on-the-job training for all types of developers coming in, whether it's someone from a boot camp or someone from, you know, with experience as a developer already. It's never a perfect set of skills that everyone has to start on day one.
Right.
So doing things like pair programming or even other, you know, formal training in specific technologies, but the foundations are generic, right?
Yeah.
If you've learned one language, you can translate that to the next language, and it's
Exactly.
just syntax at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, they employers are definitely understanding
Prepared
and
for
willing
that.
to
Oh, yeah.
train. Yeah.
Right. I think it's cool too. You know, one thing that I didn't expect that I feel like I hear from both of you is how collaborative it is too. That I think there's probably I want to say a stereotype image of coding
Oh,
where you're
so
like
much, yeah.
in a box.
There's one
typing
person,
away.
yeah,
In
like
a
at a
dark
computer.
room.
Yes,
right.
that's exactly it.
I
Yeah.
don't know why the room's always dark. but it
Screen
is.
glowing.
Yes. Yeah. So it sounds really cool
Very
that's actually there is a lot of, you know, co-learning and support and
It's hugely
and
collaborative.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of is like something that people think that there is that one person just sitting in a computer, but there's kind of this whole other collaborative piece of it where like you sit down as a team and like you talk about, okay, you know, what is our challenge? How are we going to tackle this? Who's going to be in charge of what? Like we, you know, use kind of like a mixture of agile development techniques. So, you know, we'll kind of pull pieces from Scrum and use sprints, and that's our time to sit down and really talk about, you know, how we're going to do this and who we're going to break up with and work on different things. And
Yeah, it's very collaborative.
Yeah.
I mean,
sounds like a lot of fun in a lot of ways.
It's
a lot of
fun.
Genuinely, seem to enjoy what you do.
there are those developers out there that meet that stereotype, but what I've found is if you don't have the soft skills, then the people that have the soft skills and the communication
Yes.
and the non-technical stuff,
Right.
that's absolutely critical to
Yeah.
success. And that's another angle that, you know, non-developers would bring into this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like kind of one of the prime reasons that I ended up with the job that I have now is because I was able to go in and say, you know, I've basically built my entire career up until this point working with our user base and trying to get information from them about, you know, how they're using the system, what they need help with, things like that. So being able to bring those soft skills to the table, even skills like organizational skills are huge.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could be really good at programming, but there's so many other skills that will make you an even better developer.
Right. I believe we had a question from the audience that I rolled right by. Sorry about that.
Michael asked, besides software development, what industries or jobs do you feel coding will be relevant for career growth?
It's a good question. Personally, and this is, I guess, a personal opinion here, but I can see coding becoming a skill set that the general population has. I mean, I mentioned the example of people know how to use Excel, and you don't be a developer and just put Excel on your resume. You would do that for a wide variety of different industries and job titles. I can see, you know, software development becoming one of those skills that is just general knowledge in the future, and I think it should be all the way down to you know, high school education and through college. It should be a gen ed.
I 100% agree about that gen ed. I feel like, and I kind of said this previously, we're living in an age where everything around us is digitized. I mean, I'm on my phone getting information all the time. I'm interacting with, you know, like those smart fridges and computers all day long. It's like, having that knowledge and basically being able to interact with those devices and those things is really important. And like I said, in our cohort, we had people who were project managers, who were business analysts. I mean, all of that experience in our class helped them to do their jobs better. So I feel like it is kind of an important piece of just existing today.
Great. Awesome.
Janet asked, are there any particular languages that you find are used most? Is OOP a predominant method for programming?
So yeah, OOP stands for object-oriented programming. It's a way that you structure your code basically, in a methodology. I would say that the Coding Boot Camp, it teaches a JavaScript-based stack. So it teaches something called the MERN, M-E-R-N, which is a Mongo, which is a database, Express, which is a backend, React, which is a front-end framework, and Node.js, which is another backend component. Those are prevalent in the industry right now. I won't say that that's what every company is using. I mean, as Katie mentioned, you're never going to find that exact mix of technologies on a job application, but it's more about the conceptual foundations that are portable between all languages. But I'd say that's a good start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would totally agree with Blake. You do learn the MERN stack in the cohort, but like I mentioned, we do a lot of C# work because a lot of our sites actually are ASP.NET sites. So we use a lot of C#. We also do a lot of WordPress sites, which leverage Python. So again, kind of getting that foundation, learning how to program, learning the resources that will help you get the knowledge to pivot and learn those other languages. All of those things are important. And I feel like kind of once you learn how to program and once you get that logic and that way of thinking, it's very easy to kind of use it in other areas.
Awesome. Do you have more questions? No, that's great.
Tiffany asked, I teach adult education English language learners in an exploring coding course at our adult ed center. For our students, cost of further education in this career is a challenge. Are there sources of financial assistance available for Coding Boot Camp?
That's a great question. So we have if you're a UNH alum, we do have a 10% discount that we offer. In terms of financing those programs, I'm not totally sure, and I don't know if either of you have more context on that. Do you? No.
The only thing I'd recommend is going out to the webpage, which we're going to post after this. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, unless you know offhand, we do have resources. So yeah, we're going to send you right now the webpage that will give you access to all the information about the boot camp. But we're going to send a follow-up email to the folks that were on the webinar and who registered that couldn't be here live. That will give you a person to contact with any questions or additional information you might need, and all the information that you could need on that. So if you don't see on that website the information you're looking for, his name's Mike. I would reach out to him and I'll make sure you have all that contact information after too, and ask those questions about financing. Great.
Crystal asked, how many different kinds of topics and platforms does the boot camp cover?
That's a great question.
Lots, probably more than we have time to discuss here, but it's a 24-week program.
So I mean, it's substantial.
It is substantial, and I guess one thing is it's a commitment, as it should be, and but there is a lot. I mean, I mentioned the MERN stack, which is really 4 technologies, but the program end to end talks about several different prevalent concepts and technologies along the way that all have to do with web development in general. But it's much more than just those technologies. It's very extensive, and you can talk about it from a student's side of things. It's like drinking through the fire hose.
That's what I was going to say. Is it's very much a fire hose methodology where you are getting a lot of information thrown at you, and you basically are taking that information and kind of leveraging what you need to leverage, and then realizing, and part of it is actually figuring out how to determine kind of, this is the important information, this is the takeaway, this is what is interesting, and I'm going to come back to it later.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about the courses is, while it is a lot of information coming at you at once, I think it's a really good mix of delivering the material and then immediately hands-on practicing it afterwards. because we've all been in that situation where we're just
solidify it.
seeing
Yes.
all this information come at us at
Yep.
the same time and not processing it. So it's very much a learn by doing, which differs a lot from traditional education, which can be
Yes.
long. And again, just there are very few PowerPoints. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You start and when you get to week 2, it's like there are no more PowerPoints.
Yeah.
It's constant coding practice,
Yes.
demo practice, demo practice.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the best too. I mean,
Yeah.
you are going to learn by doing, and there is going to be a lot of failing. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, and that's kind of something that was challenging for me. Not that I don't fail, because I do. I fail a lot, especially now coding. But it was kind of difficult to let go of that. I need to do this. I need to do it well, and I need to do it right the first time. That's not going to happen. I mean, maybe if you're a genius. I don't.
No.
I've never talked
seen
to
one.
I've never talked to another developer who's like picks it up immediately, never make a mistake. There are no bugs in my code. Like I've never talked to anybody like that.
Me neither.
So yeah, I mean, it's all about kind of embracing that, trial by fire, learning and failing, taking that information, moving on, and kind of refactoring and making it work.
So for context of the bootcamp itself, are there group projects? Is it, I want to say, do you take tests? Do you pass or fail? Or is it really all straight? You're learning the information. It's handled more tactically than that.
There's definitely there wasn't any tests when I was going through it. It was very much project based, which is good. There was a lot of practical, you're coding either something by yourself or you're coding as part of a team in a group, kind of working towards a final product. Yeah,
so it's during class, most classes are, like I said, there's a demo and then there's exercises that you'll do throughout the course. Those lead up to, like you said, 3 projects, which are, we'll divide the class into student teams. You actually get several class sessions to work on your projects, to think about the idea and what you're going to do all throughout the course. The first one's mostly, UI focused. The second one's more back-end focused. And then the third one ties it all together. And then there's also homeworks. So outside of class where you can practice the skills that you've learned. And the last thing I'd say, though, on test taking and all that, it's really, this course is what you get out of it. It's not a typical course where you're going to be graded, strictly, and you'll get, a B at the end of it. We do have grading for the homeworks, and we do provide feedback to all students on what they're doing constantly. But those who really invest and really dig in, and they get so much out of it. So much more than just a letter grade.
Right. Yeah, I would say it's very much about the time that you put it in class. You're going to learn a lot, but it's very much about the time that you've spent outside of class. So you might only be going to class for, I think it's maybe about 10 hours a week. Yeah. But you will be spending, I would say, at least an additional 10 hours outside. Probably, I would say, especially in project heavy times, I felt like it was, upwards of 20 to 25. So there is definitely a lot that you're going to be doing and working towards outside of class, which is where you're going to be doing a lot of the learning.
Great. So can I now I have a question. Sorry. We have a lot of questions from the audience, which is great. But can you add some context to, I know you both have very busy family lives. You've had jobs while you were taking the boot camp. Can you just add a tiny bit of context of how you felt, if someone's hesitant about the commitment factor, how you balance those things, and whether, you've always, everything comes at a cost, right? So you have to balance the pros and cons of doing it. What did that look like for you? And you didn't take the boot camp, you teach the boot camp, but how about teaching the boot camp? You still have that time commitment.
You do, yeah. I would say it's definitely more of a commitment for the students.
Oh, the students.
Yeah. But definitely still, a commitment for me. I guess what I would say is understand the commitment first. I would suggest through the website, reaching out and seeing if you can connect with some students who are currently taking the boot camp and ask them about how they're managing it. But life, make no mistake, life will get in the way. Yeah. And if you're committed to a career change or committed to this program, you have to know that that's going to happen. You may need to miss some classes along the way, but there are options to accommodate everybody, and you really, it's not easy, right? It's not this, I'm going to take this boot camp, I'm going to get these skills, and I'm just going to get another job after. While it is an unbelievably rewarding career, you have to work in it, and that personal commitment and balancing your personal life is part of it.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, make no mistake about it, it is going to be difficult, but the reward and the payout from that hard work, you will see back tenfold. I mean, what I was doing previously compared to what I'm doing now, I am so much happier. And I would say it doesn't just affect my work life, but it affects everything outside of that, my personal life, my relationships. Like, I'm much happier with what I'm doing, and I'm just happier in general. And I'm kind of one of those firm believers where anything worth doing or anything worth having, it's going to be difficult to get there, and you have to put in the work to do it. But it's worth it, and the reward is definitely there. And if I had to go back, I would do it all over again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anonymous is asking, can you give advice on how to breach the subject with current employers and sell them on the value of having someone on their team to go through the boot camp, especially if you don't have an immediate need for coding in your current position?
Can I ask a follow-up? Do they mean to try to get their employer to fund the training, or just have the person? I don't know how to interpret. Is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I could say, I guess, I know there are some employers out there who are looking to reskill existing employees to become technical. Now, I think part of the question was there isn't an immediate need for software development in your company, and I would challenge that part of it.
Totally.
I would look for opportunities, look for manual processes and things that are not as efficient as they should be. I think every company, like I said, out there has an opportunity for automation and software to solve something that they're doing manually today. And eventually for companies, a lot of times it comes down to dollars and cents. So being able to provide the value there could be a way to justify, bringing that skill set on board.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would take a look at, like, does your company have a website? Does it have either like an externally facing website, or are you utilizing some type of an intranet within the company? What type of softwares are you guys using? Because I'm sure you probably have maybe something in place that you're using that maybe doesn't meet all of your needs or the company's needs. And like Blake said, what are those manual processes that you can take and make better or improve by, creating something?
And sometimes you don't know what those are until you understand the automation and what's possible.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Thomas is asking, is there a coding boot camp that you can recommend?
UNH Coding Boot Camp.
UNH Coding Boot Camp.
Oh, no, I'm not just saying that. I really think it is. And I've seen, curriculums and things for others, and this one is really great.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I've talked to people who have attended other boot camps, and they are not all created equal. So one of the reasons that I actually chose the UNH boot camp is because I did my undergraduate here, and I knew kind of the standard and the quality that I was going to be getting from them. And I would say that I was not disappointed at all. And like I said, if I had to do it all over again, I would still choose UNH.
And we will definitely put everything about the UNH Coding Boot Camp and who to contact, more information in the follow-up email.
Christine asked, my coding experience is self-taught and mostly propelled by need, i.e. wanting to customize WYSIWYG web management systems for individualized needs for clients or volunteer projects. Width of images or iframes, customizing colors or fonts, etc. When you run into a problem mid-project, where do you turn?
I live on Stack Overflow. It's like always up in the background somewhere. So that's usually where I start. You become very good at Googling things. Your Google foo ends up very strong. So I would say Stack Overflow is really great. There are tools out there that you can use, like I know JS Fiddle one, CodePen, things like that, just if you want to go and try and test or do like a proof of concept of something that you're thinking about. Those are all really helpful. I use W3 Schools.
Yeah, I mean, all the resources that Katie mentioned, Stack Overflow, me too. I spend all my whole day on Stack Overflow. But one of the things you'll get as part of the boot camp the UNH boot camp is there are also people who have some self-taught experience that come in. So it's a wide variety of different backgrounds. And for those individuals that did have some background in coding, one of the things we say right off the bat is pretend like you don't. Because what you learn in the boot camp is the why behind what you're doing. And I started, like I said, as a self-taught developer, and you learn what you need to know, but you don't necessarily always learn the why behind it. And that's one of the things that's really focused here is foundational aspects and fundamentals. And all of a sudden, for those people, sometimes these concepts just start to click, and it's like, that all makes sense now. And now you're so much better off with that experience.
Yeah, I feel like we talked a lot too, kind of about like best practices and things like object-oriented programming, and kind of, there may not be an exactly right way to do something, and that's kind of one of the great things about coding is that everybody kind of has a personal approach. But there are definitely things that, they teach you in the bootcamp and that you'll learn that help you with things that you might not have thought of, like the performance of your website and things like that. So that all is kind of additional bonus information that you get.
Anonymous said, are there resources to get extra assistance during the program if you are feeling like you aren't picking up the material as well as you should?
Yes, absolutely. They provide you with not only an instructor, but you have 2 TAs as well that are in the class that help with grading homeworks and just going around the classroom. In addition to that, there's tutoring provided one-on-one to students at no extra cost. And so, people are going to progress at all different paces. And it's not necessarily, some people might progress for one topic faster than they will for another topic. So depending on what it is that you're learning, people's pace varies. But I would say that the bootcamp staff and the outside resources are committed to your learning as much as you're willing to put into it. It's really about how much are you willing to seek out that outside help. The help will be there.
I was going to say, I think probably the biggest one is going to be speak out if you need help.
Yes.
Otherwise, you might get left behind, and you don't want that. Like, you want to try to stay on pace, and you absolutely can and will if you reach out when you need that help.
Yes. Don't struggle silently.
Yeah, there's no need for that. And like, when you become a developer, or if you want to become a developer, you're going to have a team that you're working with. And like, I'm constantly asking my team questions. We're constantly bouncing ideas off each other and doing code reviews and looking at each other's code and like, how can we refactor it? How can we make this better? How can we optimize it? So you're never going to be alone. So use your resources, because that's going to be, a really big piece of learning and becoming a better developer.
And Janet is asking, do you see a wide range of ages taking boot camp? Any 50 to 60-year-old folks?
Yep.
Totally. 100%. I actually, in some of my projects, there were 2 women in one of them, one who managed a bank, and then another one who kind of had a little bit of a previous background in development. And they were older than me. We had kind of like a good spread. There were like some people that were kind of on the younger side, some people that, were in their 50s or 60s. And those 2 women were some of the best programmers I think I worked with while I was in that class. Like, they were incredibly dedicated, so helpful, willing to like sit down and work through stuff with me. It was really great to have them. So I definitely don't think age is an object when it comes to making the decision about whether or not you want to do it.
Yeah, it definitely. So in my current cohort, there's a distribution, like Katie said, definitely older folks, younger folks, and it has no impact on who takes the material quicker than others. It's what impacts that is how much you're willing to put into it, and the time that you're willing to invest, and how much you want it. That's the driving factor, not age.
Yeah.
And what a great skill set or way if you are further along in your career to make a shift is
Absolutely.
to get that cutting edge, exactly where the coding field is at, type of knowledge to be able to make a shift if you're at that point in your career and looking to do something like that.
Yeah.
Is that all our questions? Okay, great. I do still have a few, so I think you had touched on this, and maybe you can elaborate, or maybe you touched on all of it, but we were talking about resources. So beyond the coding boot camp once you leave, have you talked to our audience a little bit about all of the things that you use for resources going forward, or are there other things that they should know about that you haven't mentioned?
Some of the other resources that I've used are Code Academy has been a good one. I've used Treehouse, which is another website, and Khan Academy. So there are a lot of resources that you can leverage out there. And I would say those are nice because they do kind of focus on you actually coding. Because before coming into the boot camp, I'm a big reader. I love reading, and I thought that it would be possible to read and then just, I got it and I'm good and I'm just gonna go do it and I'm gonna write everything correctly right off the bat and everything's gonna work, and that's not how it goes. So just using those resources and then just going in there and trial and error is going to be a big one.
Yeah, I think obviously you can find anything on the internet, but from this course, you're going to develop a portfolio that you can work with of projects and homeworks and exercises and things, so that when you go out, you're already going to have that at your disposal. Mm-hmm. You're also going to have all the exercises that we've done, all the instructor demos, so you can look back on that material whenever you need to. Mm-hmm. And then just a network. I mean, one of the things that we say right at the beginning of the boot camp is you're going to become far closer with the people in the boot camp than you realize. Yeah. And you develop a lot of friendships and professional connections that last after the boot camp as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I would also mention if you're into actually getting together with other programmers or coders or developers, checking out like the meetups that happen in the area is another good one. Like I know there's a JavaScript group that meets up Wednesday nights that does a lot of programming. And then we actually just started up the Future Tech Women meetups again. And I think right now we're meeting every other month. So if you're interested in that, you can search for it on Facebook and come hang out with a bunch of other women that like to code.
So this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you think we could probably collect some of those resources to be able to send out in that follow-up email? So in case people didn't write it down as you said it?
Totally.
Perfect. That would be great. Awesome. So I guess I want to say before we can jump on if there's any more wrap-up questions, but we're kind of coming to the end of our webinar. I would just love to hear a little bit about what advice, if you had final advice for our audience that's interested in either the career field or the boot camp itself, what would you say to them if they're still, I want to say, on the fence at all?
First thing I guess I would say is check out the website for UNH Coding Boot Camp. Take a look through if you want to connect with a student who's currently in the cohort to understand the commitment or the value that they're getting out of it. Reach out, and that can happen. So Mike Mengers is the person to reach out to get connected. In terms of just the industry in general, there are places you can go, some of the resources that Katie mentioned, to try out some of these things and see why you won't have all the knowledge readily available to you to make a decision at that point. You can start to get a feel for the type of thing you'd be doing. So you can always try it, right? You can always try things and start learning on your own, and then see how that leads into next steps for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all really good pieces of advice. Like I said, from my personal experience, I wish that it was something that I had done earlier because I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And this really has been kind of a very positive career change for me. So I wish that I had made that change earlier instead of kind of pushing it out and making things a little more complicated. Because it really has been, I think, a great journey, and I love what I'm doing now, and I love kind of the flexibility that comes with it, and the fact that I get to learn every day, and that I work with like a really great group of people. So
awesome. Well, we do have one of the UNH boot camps is starting in March, and then I believe we have another one that starts in June. So there definitely are opportunities to sign up and get started with that sooner rather than later, since it's already mid-February. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And we'll make sure that all that information is in that follow-up email. But do we have any last-minute questions? Awesome. Well, thank you to the audience. You guys have been great. We've had so many questions that have driven the conversation. So thank you for being so engaged. And thank you, both of you, for your time. I really appreciate it. Our audience got a tremendous amount out of it. It shows from all the questions. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
There was also a poll that was just launched if everyone could answer the 4 quick questions to help us improve our program.
I think this is our 10th webinar, so we're working on it. We're definitely getting better as we go, but we do love the feedback. Even if you want to, in that follow-up email, respond and let us know about topics you'd like to see in the future. We do love tailoring them to what people would really like to see. So